Okay, well, hey, it's time for another podcast with Selena Rifkin and myself, Jason Douglas. Welcome, people of Connecticut and everybody else in the world who may be watching. This is a big day. We're gonna have a little bit of an abbreviated one again, and for a good reason. A lot has happened. I'm sure you all know, or those of you that don't know, I've decided to run a campaign against Ben Proto for Republican state chair at the state central committee, which is, I think, normally in Middletown, but they're having a vote tonight in Berlin, and I'm sure more and more people in Connecticut become aware of it. Just to give you a little bit of background, it was right around, I say, April when we started looking at well, we've been looking at the Republican Party for a long time, but we started really looking at it with a fine-tooth comb around March and April. We started to realize, I think Selena started calling different various RTCs around the state to see
You
what
want
kind
me
of
to talk
available.
about that?
Yeah, you go ahead. You
So,
talk about that.
so what I've been doing is I started with my own, and back in October, I called my RTC chair, which I looked on the GOP website. There was nothing there. There was no, in the events section, I looked there. There was nothing there. And then I went and looked, and it's like, okay, there's my RTC. And there was an email. It's not all of them have, they all have email. There's always email in there. And sometimes there's a Facebook page and sometimes there's a website. And you can see that on the Connecticut GOP page. So I emailed because that was all there was for my town. And I emailed and nothing, nothing. Months went by. So we went through the holidays. I tried again in beginning of January, nothing. So I was like, that's very strange.
Season and everything.
Yeah. So then at that point, I got involved with Jason and we started talking. And I ended up, I was like, all right, so how can I find out what's going on? I went to my mayor in my town, who is a Republican, and I like him. I like the job that he's done. So that was, that was genial. And he was like, oh, that guy, he's not doing anything. And he had started his own group because he's going to need help with his campaign. So he put together a group. And whether or not that will be recognized as an RTC, come later, I don't know, because it's impossible to find the rules if you're looking down the sheets. So then I started going through the website, the Connecticut GOP website, because I wanted to see, all right, okay, who's got a website, who's on what. And I'm not on Facebook anymore. And so a bunch of these places had Facebook pages. And I'm like, well, that doesn't do me any good. What am I going to do with that? And there was a meeting that I went to, and some of you may have seen the video of
Yeah,
me.
what about the young vote too? With Facebook.
Yeah. It's like,
Young people are on
I'm
Facebook anymore.
sorry, young voters are not on Facebook.
Right.
They're like, are you kidding me? Let's get serious here. So I'm looking around, and then as I've been getting involved with the group, I've been asking people, it's like, okay, you went to your RTC. What was your experience? Because I can't go to my RTC. I did go to Shelton's, which was very organized and they were doing Robert's Rules of Order and everything. And let me tell you, if groups are not doing Robert's Rules of Order, all you're going to want to do is stab yourself in the chest, because Robert's Rules of Order is how you get through arguments and discussions without wanting to kill each other, because there are rules. That's important.
Yep.
One of
debate
our
rule. Just give us a little bit about the Roberts rules. I mean, is there
Robert's
debate rules?
Rules of Order are the standard for any kind of group meeting. And it's kind of shocking to me that that people sometimes don't know what that is. Someone else asked me, it's like, what's Robert's Rules of Order? That is the whole sort of thing where you go in and someone is like, oh, I'm making a motion to, talk about X, or, and then someone has to agree that that's a good idea.
I second the motion, right?
They second the motion, right?
It's like that old Christmas special.
Yeah, and then
second.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have X amount of time, maybe 3 minutes. And it's pretty much how they run town meetings and that sort of thing. This is like practice for, being on your town board. There's all sorts of, like, the rules in, like, for example, the state Senate are a little bit different, but they're,
Generally,
we have to have these rules so that people can communicate without wanting to stab each other.
of course.
So one of our other people that we communicate in our circle went to their meeting and they wanted to stab themselves because these people spent an hour and a half arguing about some point of minutia, which should have been like statement, decision, done.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
So I've heard plenty of stories, like Amy Chai talked about how she tried to get hold of her RTC so that she could get some data. So because she's running and they didn't answer her. So there's, so the frustration of this is like, if you want to be on your RTC, and by the way, if you want to be on your RTC, they have to decide to vote you in because that's the rules. You can't be in the group unless they vote you in.
Yeah.
So which means that those of us who are just showing up are like not necessarily welcome. And then there was another person I talked to who are like, well, that looked like a drinking club to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been asked so many of the, I've talked to over 40 of the delegates that are supposed to be voting for or against me tonight. And they keep asking me that. How many RTC meetings have you attended? All they care about is basically they're asking me, are you an insider? Are you one of our club or not? That's really what they're saying, and then the answer is no. I don't go to your drinking and smoking and whatever you're doing there, gossiping and eating the buffet, whatever. So I'm hearing that a lot. I did go to some RTC meetings in Bolton years ago.
Okay.
And there was no Robert's Rule of Order. They were talking about the issues openly, and it was fine. But then they came to me and asked, they wanted me to run for stuff, and there was nothing. There was about maybe 8 or 9 people there. Out of, I think they had more than 20 members. Like nobody, half the people must don't even go, and then nothing gets done. That's a place like Shelton is probably. So I had a woman actually from there, a woman from the Meriden RTC. Yeah, a woman from the Meriden RTC texted me and she was offended because I was criticizing the RTCs. And I told her, she said, Meriden, we raised a lot of money, and we're very organized. Meriden is apparently very good too.
Yeah,
and I said, well, I'm not trying to criticize all the RTCs. I said, if yours is good, then tell us how you do it so we can spread the word to the other towns.
Yes,
I think some towns just aren't organized enough to do it. Other towns don't care to do it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I'll tell you what Meriden did, and I can tell you what Meriden did. Meriden was very good. Meriden, what they did was when they have a new Republican voter, they send out a letter that says, "Hi, welcome to the party. We're really glad to have you."
Wow.
They have a waiting list of 30 people to get into the RTC. And that's like, well, how complicated is that?
Right. So the thing is that the town, there's a lot of different towns. There's some organized different than others, but there's no guidance from the state. The state just says to me, it's up to the towns.
Right. Yeah. They just wave their hands. And that was, that was part of the conversation I had when I was at the, when I got a bit, I had an interesting conversation with one of the delegates at the Conservative Women's Forum a few months back.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
That ended up being a little.
I talked to him on the phone too.
Yeah. And, so yeah, and that was his comment as well. It's not completely up to the towns what you're going to do, and it's like, dude, isn't
like fundamentally he's right. It is technically up to the towns what to do. However, how the towns are limited resources, smaller populations, a lot of them, big cities with a lot of Democrats in them, and they face a lot of challenges. And it'd be a lot easier from the towns to do it and organize the way they got to do it if they had true guidance from the state RTC, from the local, from the SCC. Come on.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's that complicated to go through and look at the good RTCs, the ones that are working, and say, let's do a deep dive. Tell us what you do. Tell us how you're doing this. Yep. How can we model that? This is how you get it correct. There are people doing it great. They're doing a great job. But why isn't the rest of the state like this?
Doesn't the state have an interest in how the towns do? Look,
and that's the problem.
If you were running an executive office of, say, United Airlines or something like that, wouldn't it matter to you? Wouldn't you be supervisory? Yes, the sales department runs its own thing.
You'd get thrown out. They'd have another CEO. If the corporation performed the way the current Connecticut GOP is performing, the CEO would get thrown out.
Gone, right. So I get the fact that a lot of delegates have told me, a couple of them have told me that they think Ben's responsible just for fundraising. That's really all they care about doing or whatever.
Mhm.
And boy, what a cushy job that is for $70,000 a year. You know, like great. We can. If I was chairman, I would form a committee for fundraising. I would form a committee for candidate recruitment. And for a committee for town development. You know, we would have a committee for all these areas. We become a true machine. And
That's what it that's
I
what a
talked to
party
two of the
does.
delegates. I talked to two of the delegates at the same time today. This will be
Hmm.
interesting. They they're on my side. They're on our side. They're MAGA guys all the way.
Okay.
But they're not going to vote for me. Why? Because well, not because they're afraid of Ben. There are guys that are afraid of Ben, by the way.
Wow.
These guys are very honest with me. I actually really appreciated that. They're very much on our side. But they say they're the only district in Connecticut that has a plan, and they sent me the plan. The plan looks a lot like the one we put out, our platform. It's
Okay.
very good.
Okay.
They're good, you know. And but if they don't vote for Ben and Ben wins, Ben's gonna basically they need Ben on their team for this plan, is what they're saying, right? Now
Right.
I kind of understand that, but the problem is, so if I think if like I was going to win, if they knew I was going to win, they'd vote for me.
Right.
But none of them think I'm going to win,
Right.
so they all are cowering away. So it's this catch-22 that makes it
That's
difficult to get.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Right. So I get where they're coming from. So my answer to them is, well, God, get everybody together to vote for me, and then
Yeah.
we can implement the plan now. And you know what he said? He said, well, you know what I said to him then? I said, you know, I think Ben, I don't think, I understand your plan, but Ben's not going to help you with your plan.
No.
Ben, matter of fact, if you're trusting Ben to help you with your plan, or even if you're trusting him not to interfere with your plan,
Mm-hmm.
then you're mistaken. It's going to fail. And he's like, yeah, if that happens, all the fires will go up in the northeast part of the state, and we're going to put them out next time around. I'm like, great, we don't
Oh,
have
next.
time. Why wait?
Yeah. Yeah. We
So
don't have
I
time
do.
for that.
One point that they make that I get that is good is with
Okay.
if they is that if they're not going to if it's true what they say,
Mm-hmm.
if they vote for me and then I lose, then Ben's going to put the hammer on them. But what they're not missing is that Ben's going to put the hammer on them anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
That
that is how this works. And
is how this works.
yeah.
And so that's what we're up against here. The only thing I think they can, and another thing is, this is mind-boggling. At least 15 of or 17 of them separately have said to me, "Oh, I believe what you're saying. I agree. They all agree with me."
Mm-hmm.
But yet they don't want to vote for. They don't want to vote for me because they made a promise to Ben already. Is this about promises and personalities, or is it about
It's
you
about
know?
the people of Connecticut.
Is it about policy and principle and fixing the state?
Yeah.
So yeah, about the people of Connecticut, and so it's ridiculous. So even if my odds of winning like are below 50%, I mean they're probably they're not good. But there's two things that could help that may help me win. One is if a biggest crowd as we can get outside the place that maybe sway some of the minds.
Right.
These guys told me when I get in the room with the committee, I'm gonna look around the room and I'm gonna understand why they're so pathetic. They're a bunch of old white dudes,
Okay.
old ass dudes that think they have no plan. They're just so set in their little lifestyle,
Okay.
and they're just completely ignorant and incognizant
Mm-hmm.
of. They're not dumb men. They're just so that's what we're up against.
Right.
Um, my answer to that is
Let me tell you a comment that I got that day. I had that discussion with that
mhm,
gentleman. Um, so I mentioned the fact that, they, it's like, well, why do so many of these RTCs not even have a website? It's not like a website is that complicated. Apparently, it is too complicated. The response I got, and not from him, but from somebody else, was, well, they're on Facebook. I'm like, that's not the same thing as a website. But
even some of the
it
websites
was
are like,
presented as if this was the answer. And this is the frustration that I have, is that
I know,
when people say,
crazy.
oh, it's just, they start blaming the Connecticut voters. And it's like, how about a little introspection here? There's a lot of, on a national level, there's a lot of talk. I'm on X, so you can find anybody who was watching this can find me on X. And there's a lot of talk on a national scale of like, oh, the Democrats haven't taken a look at themselves, about, how about a little, little self-reflection about why you freaking lost this race. And it's
They're
like,
not interested anymore in the race.
well, they should. But the
They're not.
Republicans should be doing the same thing, because it's not like this was a slam dunk. It was,
No.
it's like, yes, we got a majority of voters, but there's still a lot of damn problems out there.
The reason why Republicans are losing so much in Connecticut has nothing to do with the voters.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with us. We're not organized. We're fragmented. We're broken.
Yes. Yes, we are. And that's probably by design. And
yes, it is by design.
And I'm gonna talk about something else. So I probably have mentioned I've mentioned voter election validity. And I was in a meeting yesterday, and yeah, dead people vote in this state. We have the receipts.
I met Joe Hoff the other day.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he came down to Milford, met with the people that are helping promote my campaign. And
I didn't get to hear how that went. Why don't you tell me how that went?
Oh, it was great. The buffet was wonderful.
Joe Hoff is. So
okay, Joe Hoff is a nationally known pundit for election integrity. He's been studying it for a while. Yeah. He'd have to give you his full background. Okay. But he is definitely a powerful national influence on election integrity. And he was impugned and persecuted for a while for trying to bring out what happened in the 2020 election. He has statistics and data. Like for instance, he showed you something in Connecticut. When you're doing it, if you're running an election, there's 15 points of emphasis that are supposed to be implemented to make sure the election has integrity.
Yes.
Like voter ID. Paper ballot. Certain counting procedures. There's about 15 of them. Most of the things on that list in Connecticut are either not even being done at all,
right,
or just being done half-assed.
Right.
So that stuff needs to be exposed. Okay.
It does.
And we're never going to fix it unless we
come out soon.
People in office.
That's going to come out soon, because United Sovereign Americans is going to be filing their lawsuit soon, and there will be the group that I'm working with is actually going to be filing HAVA complaints, which are election board. It's like there's all this long list of stuff, and that means that it's like, well, we found these errors. It isn't up to us to investigate them, but it's like, we found these errors. Here's the evidence. You should go investigate this. Yeah. And some of our Republican lawmakers know about these, and they've just kind of thrown up their hands. And it's like, well, what do you want me to do about this? I make laws. Well, you could say something in public.
Yeah.
Like, and I get it. They're, they're very busy people, but you know what?
What? You can't, how can you be too busy for exposing election fraud?
I don't know. I'm being extremely gracious here, but you can tell from the tone of my voice that I'm working really hard at it.
Yeah, right. And this is insane. We need help from the federal government. I called the White House this morning. Did you? If you call the White House, somebody will answer the phone. Did you know that? If you call the White House, somebody will answer the phone.
No kidding.
Pick up the phone. White House, can I help you?
Wow.
I told them who I am, what I was doing.
Okay.
And why we need, how we love Donald Trump, and get this. And all he said at the end was, "Okay, thank you," and he hung up the phone. Okay. So I thought maybe he was one of those leftover never Trumpers that are still in the White House working the phones.
Well, they may have some standard of how they respond to. Who knows?
I thought maybe they're probably told not to respond, just to
they may not be. And
that's probably right.
A ton of people calling, so if they engage, that's more time on the phone. So,
true.
So you have to, but hey, you called the White House. What the heck? And now I know that someone will answer the phone. That's pretty cool. So
yeah, it's true. So as we have, another point I want to make is, to the committee as well, they say they're getting things done, they have a plan, whatever. You and I and John and the rest of our group and the rest of a couple of the other movements together, we all got together and we've helped Chris Lancia, Amy Shai, and John DeBarros become solid congressional candidates in 3 of our 5 districts. We believe are going to win next November. Just us.
Yeah.
We've done more than that committee has done. I asked Mary Ann Turner on the phone what kind of congressional candidates she had prepared from, what the state was doing to prepare congressional candidates. Oh, well, that's next year. We're going to have a convention and we're working on it, blah, blah, blah. Good Lord. And we're not even there.
Right.
It's look, there are high school kids that could do a better job than Ben Proto. And yet here we are.
Right.
A lot of guys are saying,
like to refer our listeners back to our Thursday podcast, which is up.
Yep.
So
tell me a little about what you and Amber are doing.
Yeah, so Amber is one of our partners here, and she's great. She worked on the RFK Junior campaign. She drove in a bus around Connecticut, and she's a fireball. She's really awesome. And so what we've been doing is so Jason, win or lose, we have a plan. The plan is to put together a pack and have what we want to do is consult is offer services to local RTCs. And this is like, obviously we're still going to be sponsoring the podcast and and there's still the newsletter. And so please sign up for the newsletter if you haven't. CT commonsense.substack.com, and we're going to be ramping that up and doing more with that. But the plan is to offer help to local RTCs and to try and get their numbers up.
They're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, what
that's great. That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful.
There's a couple of different options. One of the things we want to, we could probably talk about, which we haven't worked this out yet, but it's just like socializing. Like, it's likely we could start. This is just like, I'm just thinking this through in my head, is like a new idea, is like, go look at those local RTCs, sit down and talk to people, find out what they're doing right. And like something like what Meriden is doing, because that's so basic, so
right.
simple,
and
so inexpensive.
The state central committee should have a subcommittee dedicated to that.
Yeah, it's like, here, you signed up. I just signed up as a Republican. I was a Libertarian. I just changed my party affiliation. I didn't get any letter. So, but we know mine isn't working. And so find out what people are doing right, try and share that with other RTCs. But we can also do, we could set this up as like an online training. Web space isn't that expensive at this point. And we could, just in terms of making money, we could charge a little bit to say, okay, you guys can have access to this online training, or if you want, we'll come out and talk to you.
Right.
And, we will, we'll help you. We will help you figure out how you get from point A to point B. One of the things that
it'll be interesting to see how. No, I'm sorry. It'll be interesting to see how the town committees react to you guys. If some will like reject you because they're corrupt, or others will embrace you, and we'll be able to fit that all out. Yeah.
And there are ways to find Republican voters. It's a little bit more labor intensive, but really all we need is a contact. If we have RTCs that are resistant, I got a plan for that too. So,
great.
But what we need are dedicated MAGA people in every town. That if your RTC is great, fantastic, go with that. And we still have some ideas about how we could make it better.
Yeah.
But if you have, like in my town, a non-existent RTC, or you've got one that's hostile, like my other friend who went to that group, and it was all, it was like drinking buddies.
Maybe we should come up with an Excel document and call it the RTC grading chart. We can put it online. So give them an A, give them a grade like a school, A, B, C, D, E, and then like a little one-liner about what they're, a little sort of intangible line about what's going on.
Yeah,
I'll help you with that.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
so this morning I was on WDRC. Yeah, we could do that. I was on WDRC this morning.
Oh, cool. How'd that go?
Twice, actually. Called in with a pitch in the morning, and then I called someone who's helping me with my campaign, named Sheila. I called her, and she said, the one that's been interviewing me all over the place.
Nice.
And she picked up the phone and said, hey, you're calling. She said, you're going to be on in a minute. I'm like, I didn't even know what was going on. Next thing you know, I'm on WRDC again.
Okay.
So when I called this, it really went very, very well.
Excellent.
And what was needed to be said was said. I also called WFSB, WVIT, and WTNH this morning.
Okay.
Two of them answered. FSB, I left a message. I talked to a person on the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Told them about tonight.
All right.
On the Berlin Turnpike.
Okay.
But the first time I called WDRC this morning, Marianne Turner was already on as a guest, and they had her on with me.
Well,
we had a little continuation of the phone call we had on the air.
Now I understand that she's very devoted to the party, and that she's done a lot of hard work for the party, and that she is running again.
Yeah, but she doesn't. But her views of Ben are skewed, though. She thinks Ben is just she doesn't blame Ben for anything, even though they have a love-hate relationship.
Hmm.
She's still like they've been working together for a long time now. And when you work together for somebody for a long time, even
Hmm.
if it's up and down, you kind of feel like you kind of got their back, they got your back a little bit. I think that's the problem. I don't think she sees how bad Ben really is.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's my guess. I mean, but her and I got along fine. I spent 600. You know how much money I spent on a goddamn suit today? $667 out the door. Man, oh man. I
Well,
thought maybe
hopefully you'll
350.
have other opportunities to wear that suit other than at funerals.
I will, because if win or lose, I'm
Hmm.
not going anywhere.
Okay. You still have
Now,
to wear the red hat though.
how's that?
You still have to wear the red hat with the suit though.
Well, here's what I'm gonna do.
Maybe a red tie too.
Oh, I have the red tie.
Okay.
Here's
Excellent.
what I'm gonna do. I'm
Okay.
gonna bring the hat.
Okay.
I'm gonna bring cue cards because I need them.
Okay.
I've never had cue cards for. I've done speeches before. I've never needed, but this is too important not to have them. I'm actually gonna tell the committee that when I first get out.
Right.
I'm like, this is how my speech is gonna start. I'm giving away too much
You
here.
know
Here we
what?
go.
It's okay. Be who you are. Yeah,
I'm gonna say,
don't now.
I said when I'm used to making speeches from the heart. I don't usually prepare notes or anything, but this one, the state of the Connecticut is in such turmoil right now
Hmm.
that I need to have some cue cards just to make sure I make every
I
point
want
I
to
need to.
miss anything.
Yeah, and then I'll get into the speech.
Okay.
But somewhere along the lines, when the speech is almost over, I'm gonna throw the cue cards down, throw my MAGA hat on, and then I'm gonna lay it out. So stay tuned. It will be recorded.
Okay.
So you
Good.
get to see it. The public will get to
Good.
see it
Good.
by hook or by crook. The media's all over it. It'll be what's going to be very. I want people to first of all, if you can, come on down and join us. Hang out in the parking lot. Bring a sign that says "Proto must go." We
Hmm.
want the whole bit for this thing. Delegates are going to now. I got the scoop. Delegates are supposed to arrive around 6:30.
Okay.
Right. So get there by 6. When they're coming in, say who are you voting for. We want Jason. We don't want Proto. We don't want that kind of stuff. We want change.
Hmm.
We want this committee's ineffective, stuff like that. Peaceful, of course, but we want people to know
Yes.
that this is got to stop. And if you don't have time to go and you're driving in the area, then just lean on your horn a little bit when you're driving by. This is 2421 Berlin Turnpike, Berlin, Connecticut.
Okay.
Okay, it'll be starting, like I said, around 6:30. I'll be there pretty early.
Okay.
I'm gonna go there early before everybody gets there and park somewhere
I'll
nearby
make sure I
and
put
sit in
that
my
address
car and
in the
go,
show notes.
huh?
I'll make sure I put that address in the show notes, and I'm going to put this out as soon as we're done.
Furthermore, there's a 50, apparently, don't hold me to this, but I'm pretty sure for a $50 fee, you can pay that's for the dinner. You can go to the dinner and go into the room, be in the room. So if there's a few of you that want to do that and go in there, and then because I'll tell you what this is. You just mentioned the rules of order, right? The Robinson rules,
Robert's Rules of Order.
Robert's rules of order.
Yep.
The same thing goes in this meeting tonight,
Hmm.
right? In order for me to be able to speak, even though I'm running, you would think someone who's running would be able to just automatically speak, wouldn't you? Oh no, we don't do
Someone's
that
got to
here.
nominate you, don't they?
Just the way things are, they say.
Yep.
If I become chairman, by the way, I
Mhm.
want to make this public. All monthly SEC meetings will be required attendance, and it'll be set in a venue where the public can come and observe.
Okay.
And there'll be a question and answer session at the end.
Right.
So anyway, come on down. If you're so inclined, because of these rules, in order for me to actually get to speak, we need one to
Someone's got to nominate.
nominate me, and another one
Someone's
second.
got a second.
Right. So this is mind-boggling. Even all the MAGA people,
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to do it because they don't want to be the one to put themselves out there. They don't want it's their own little
Yeah.
reputation line. Or like in the case of the guys I was talking about earlier, they have a plan they want to do, that's at least that's a noble reason. The rest of the reasons are like a promise and it's a bunch of garbage. At least those guys have a reason. They think they're doing a strategy. It's not going to work, but they think they're doing a strategy that will work. So at least they think that they're telling me what they want to do, and I give them credit for that. It's still a no vote, but if they're in a later district, they go by district. They start with 1, 2, 3, all the way. They're in one of the later districts. So I told them, I said, if I have a majority by the time they get to you, you better flip flop quick.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I win, then we could do it already. You do your plan right now and wait for Ben to blow
Right.
up and then do it later after you supposedly get rid of him 2 years from now.
Yeah.
But so anyway, we need all the support we can get down there. I'm going to try to take a little mini nap and then get up and bullet point my speech. It's all here still.
Okay.
I have some things written down, but we got some good stuff. I can't wait, really.
Okay.
I'm even just a little bit nervous. Just a little.
No,
Just
that means your blood's flowing. That's
the
good.
blood's flowing, yeah.
You're not overconfident, so that's good. It's never good to be overconfident.
6 months ago, no, 7 months ago, on Thanksgiving night, I had nothing to do with politics. I wasn't even on social media.
Me
I went for
neither.
work. Nothing.
Yeah.
I was playing pool with my buddy Jim, watching, doing my investigation work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the night that I just figured out that of course, have been lamenting the problems of the Republican Party all this time, but I figured out that I could use the algorithms that I use for my cases that I work on to plug into the help the Republican Party organize itself and get ready to go. One guy's told me, "Oh, we have." So I told him the profiles I always talk about that help unite the districts and keep networking going for the party. I talked to one of the delegates, and he says, "Oh, we have that already. We just, as a matter of fact, we just got some new software. It's terrific, just like that, so we can do those
They
things."
did
Right,
get new software. That's confirmed. So they did
right,
new software.
right. But
Hopefully that
do you
means
think
that
Ben's going to let that? You think Ben will help with implementing that? You think that software is going to be implemented to its fullest potential? Probably not.
and they're
Secondly,
probably gonna. Well, we'll see if
will all the
get
RTCs
charged
take
for it.
right? Will all the RTCs taking advantage of it? Probably not. And here's the third thing: how much do you think it costs?
Oh, I don't know. Do you know?
Probably $100,000 or something
Oh,
ridiculous. When
well,
you and I are going to do the same thing on a $9.99 a month Dropbox account.
yeah,
That's
sure,
the kind of money. I know how government is.
yeah.
We're going to have a budget committee. One committee I forgot to mention as chairman. We have a budget committee too
Mm-hmm.
that will make sure our money is tight and we save money. We do Doge, baby. We don't do this.
Right.
This. Oh, what's the software cost? hundred
So
thousand dollars.
I can rattle off some numbers. So last year,
Sure.
this is all on open secrets. If y'all want to look this up, the Connecticut Republican Party took in 3.2 million last year, and that was, and that's, it's average. It's not as high as some states, but we're not considered a battleground state, so it's probably
Mm-hmm.
about average,
We are now.
probably about normal. So 1.3 of that went out to the RNC, which, that's my next question is why are we not?
Why are we giving money to the national committee?
Well, yeah, I mean, what are we getting out of the, it's like, doesn't seem like the national party's any help here either. And, I think one of your friends had said that, oh yeah, the RNC abandoned us 10 years ago. Well, why are we giving them money then? But anyway, that's like, I
You
don't
know
know.
who?
This is, I don't know. This is what's on open secrets. $81,000 for mailings and stuff like that. 146,000 in fundraising. Clearly, none of that involved knocking on anyone's doors. And this is kind of my frustration with them saying, it's like, oh, you do have experience in fundraising? It's like, well, what has your fundraising done to get the public engaged?
Right,
It's
nothing.
like, okay, so you can get donors from, development companies in Texas, and I'm not kidding about that. And so there's development companies in Texas on the donor list. There's medical corporations. So it's like, who are these people? And it's like, okay, that's nice. You're giving the Republican Party money, but is there any expectation attached to that? I will say that Linda McMahon donated $10,000. So
Okay.
again, on open secrets, anybody can find this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, so why are these people from out of state corporations donating money to the Connecticut GOP? And that's a question. That's a question we should be asking. And it's like, so, but it's not, it's like, what's with the fundraising? Okay, that's great. Okay, so say all of this is great and it's legit. But what about connecting with the normal human beings?
The voters?
The voters.
Isn't that the ultimate end game here? Aren't
Yeah.
votes like runs? If you're playing baseball, aren't voters like runs? Aren't we trying to score runs? Are we trying to score voters?
That would be the theory.
Whoa.
When people are talking about democracy, which of course we have a republic.
Yeah.
This is like what is the connection with all of this fundraising to individual human beings? Have we done, and this is one of the things Amber talked about, is like, we need to do grassroots fundraising so people are invested.
Mm-hmm.
People need to be invested in the party. If you haven't convinced people to give you their money, they are not invested in you.
Right. Well, like I said, fundraising to me is the easy part, but spending it wisely is what
Right.
jeez. But fundraising is the easy part. I see just get them in the room with me, and but you know what? Like again, I've said this before. I'll say it again. There are countless good businesses that want to do business in Connecticut that
Yes.
can't because
Yes.
we push them away. How about
Yes.
the gun? How about the gun industry? The
Yeah.
gun industry has been pushed out. Is leaving Connecticut.
Well,
Samuel
they left a
Colt,
long time ago. They left.
our
They left
our state
after
was
that
yeah, our
political thing.
state was built on Samuel Colt and Elizabeth Colt. Elizabeth Colt was fought for women's right to vote.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes, she did. She was one of the
Did it?
suffrage girls here in Connecticut. Yep.
Wow.
And
I'm
we're just
right
pushing
about
all the
her.
yeah. Check her out.
Yeah.
It's Sheila told me that stuff. I didn't even know that either, actually.
Nice.
But that's the kind of stuff that we got to open up Connecticut for business. And
Yeah.
I actually, two of the guys, two of our friendliest guys in the committee, I said, "What is the plan?" They told me about their plan, the same guys I'm telling you about, and I said, "Does your plan call for a governor in the governor's mansion next year?"
Hmm.
You know what their answer was? Well, you got to win the playoff games before you can win the Super Bowl. He said.
Well,
I said, "I'll tell you what. You keep
that's
going on when you're."
true, but could we have some long-term goals?
I don't think. I look at next November as the goal to get a governor in the seat. What
Mhm.
I can't even imagine in any circumstances, no matter how bad it is, saying let's wait till two more elections. I just don't get that.
Yeah.
I don't identify with that. The Republicans do have a plan supposedly to be win by 2030. Look,
Okay.
how about win now and then
Yeah.
blow them out of the water by 2030? How about that?
Mhm. Yeah. That's not a
You
plan.
got to think
Sorry,
big, and
that's
the
not a
voters are on our side right now. The voters are on our side right now. I've said it again. I got to repeat myself. There are tons of Democratic voters in Connecticut right now that do not want to vote for woke policies
plan.
and illegal aliens being funded more than citizens are, and all this cultural warfare crap going on. There are
Hmm.
a lot of reasonably minded Democrats. They're not too loud because
Hmm.
most Republicans aren't too loud either,
Right.
but they're out there, and there's no way.
There's a ton of independent voters who can't.
Connecticut has right
I'm
more than
sorry, the
anybody in
Republican
Connecticut.
Party doesn't have a good reputation. They don't have a good reputation, even
They
among
shouldn't right now
Republicans.
for
You
good
know?
reason.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'm running hard against Proto. My speech tonight is going to be serious, Nathaniel Hawthorne, hell and brimstone stuff all the way. Yeah, it's going to be great. Because, like I said, the chances are I'm going to lose, but I do have a chance. I never count myself out.
Hey, this was, you know what? This was a Hail Mary and a worthy run, and you might freaking win. Who knows? You know
I
what?
might win, but
Magic happens.
but at the
So,
very least, even if I don't win,
mhm,
I'm going to get a chance that most of us in the bars and the restaurants and in the living rooms, the kitchens of Connecticut sit around and complain about this stuff.
mhm.
I'm really happy that I'm going to get the chance to actually sit in the room and tell them it myself. Go right
Nice.
to them and tell them what we're thinking.
Yeah,
And believe
they
me,
need to
I'll
hear it.
do it.
They need to hear it. They
Yeah.
really, really, really need to hear it.
So
So,
is there anything else on your mind? Because I got to
oh,
prepare a
that's
speech, take a
good.
nap, and
Go rest up and prepare. And
we're gonna make this podcast really go. We're gonna right. We're gonna make
yeah,
it
yeah.
stronger. We're gonna
This is totally on the table. This is going to continue. So
it's it is. We're gonna keep going. Now, even if I do become chairman, I'll be
well,
busy. I won't be have
then you have to be a guest.
I'll have to be a guest. That's
You'll
right.
have to be a guest because
That's right. I'll come on as a guest weekly. I'll come on as a fifth. I'll come on monthly as a full guest.
okay,
By the way,
allow
also
it.
one more thing I want to say as chairman, it's obvious that media is the key to success.
Mm-hmm.
And what
Yes,
is the
sir.
Republican Party doing for media right now, as far as media attention right now?
Right. Exactly.
Nothing.
Right.
Zero, zip, nada. Look at the kind of media attention I mentioned before, Thanksgiving night. It has
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with any of this. Look at the kind of media attention we've drummed up in 6 months. Just us
Mm-hmm.
running our mouths online and doing things better, better than the Republicans already.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what I could do as chairman, do it with this kind of Anyway, I'm glad everybody's here to listen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We will see you again on Thursday. We can talk about what happened. And do we have a guest Thursday, Selena?
Just remember, we have whatever we're going to do. We got to do it tomorrow because I am away this weekend.
That's
I'm
right.
leaving on Thursday.
Tomorrow's my birthday.
Okay.
So
Well,
we're going to
then.
have the podcast. Next one will be next Tuesday then.
Okay.
Let's
Very
do
good.
that. We'll take a little break, okay?
Okay.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, God bless Connecticut. God bless America. See you tonight in at the Berlin Turnpike. Don't miss it.
All right.
One more thing.
Yes.
Find out who you RTC. Go to your RTC. Find out who the representative is. Start calling them. Get their numbers. Start calling them. We posted their numbers online a couple of days ago, I think. Start calling them and telling them to get Ben Proto out.
Tell people where to find that.
It's on our post on X, right? On the Connecticut Mag Republicans post on X. And it's on Facebook as well. It's on my site on Facebook.
If you posted it, then
it's there
in the group. Okay.
But either way, you can get their number, and even if you don't find it on X, you call your RTC chair, your RTC, and say, who's our representative in our district, and then their numbers should be available.
Mm-hmm.
Call them and get a hold of them, and just tell them that Proto's got to go.
Yep.
All right. God bless Connecticut. God bless America. Goodbye, everybody.
Okay.